You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. The goals of incident response training are not abstract. They are rooted in practical improvements that determine whether a team can withstand the chaos of a real cyber event. Training is designed to sharpen speed, ensuring analysts act swiftly rather than hesitating. It builds accuracy, reducing the chance of missteps that could worsen an incident. Coordination is another core goal, making sure that technical, legal, and communications teams move in harmony instead of working at cross purposes. Finally, training strengthens decision-making under pressure. When adrenaline is high and the stakes are significant, people default to their preparation. Well-run exercises provide that preparation, creating muscle memory for complex scenarios. For learners, this is like military drills or emergency services training. The goal is not just knowledge but reflex. Incident response training equips teams with the ability to react quickly, consistently, and effectively, even in the middle of confusion and uncertainty. There are several training modalities available, each offering unique benefits. Tabletop exercises are the most accessible, involving structured discussions of hypothetical scenarios. Participants walk through events step by step, practicing judgment and communication. Role-play drills move beyond talk, assigning participants specific roles and requiring them to act as if the incident is live. Live technical drills simulate attacks in controlled environments, forcing operators to run detection queries, apply containment, or rotate credentials in real time. Finally, Red Team-assisted exercises provide the most realism by simulating actual adversary tactics. Red teams can probe defenses, test detection coverage, and force blue teams to adapt under realistic pressure. Each modality can be used progressively, depending on maturity. For learners, imagine athletic training. Classroom theory builds understanding, scrimmages provide practice, and live competition validates readiness. Similarly, response training moves from discussion to action, gradually increasing realism until it mirrors the stress of actual incidents. Scenario design determines whether a training session is meaningful or superficial. Good scenarios must be realistic, drawing from actual attack patterns, threat intelligence, or past incidents. They should be measurable, with clear objectives and outcomes that can be evaluated afterward. Scope must also be well-defined to decide whether the exercise tests a single team or engages the entire enterprise. Finally, scenarios must align with organizational priorities. For example, a retail company may prioritize testing payment card breaches, while a hospital may focus on ransomware disrupting patient care. Random or irrelevant scenarios waste time and erode trust in the process. For learners, it is helpful to compare this to designing flight simulators. Pilots don't rehearse random disasters. They practice scenarios they are most likely to face. The same logic applies in security training. Design scenarios that are realistic, scoped, and aligned to your most important risks. Role-specific training ensures that every participant understands not just the general incident process, but their unique responsibilities. Analysts practice detection and containment tasks, running tools, and interpreting telemetry. Incident commanders rehearse coordination, decision prioritization, and communication flow. Legal teams practice evaluating breach notifications and ensuring regulatory obligations are met. Communications specialists refine their skills in drafting updates for stakeholders, executives, or even the public. Executive leaders practice briefings, learning how to absorb complex technical data and make risk-based decisions. When each role is exercised individually and together, the entire organization becomes stronger. For learners, think of this like a theater rehearsal. Actors must not only know their own lines but also how their timing interacts with others. Role-specific training ensures that when the curtain rises on a real incident, each participant performs their part seamlessly and confidently. Building progressively complex exercises is another best practice. Teams should not start with a full red team live fire if they have never done a tabletop. Instead, exercises should grow in sophistication, gradually introducing more stress and more moving parts. A series might begin with a fishing tabletop, progress to a role-based credential theft drill, expand to a live malware simulation, and finally culminate in a red team engagement. This incremental approach allows skills to compound, gaps to be fixed, and confidence to grow. Throwing teams into overwhelming scenarios prematurely often backfires, creating frustration and resistance. For learners, this is similar to learning to swim. You begin in the shallow end, progress to deeper waters, and eventually practice in open conditions. Training works the same way. Progression ensures teams are stretched, but not broken, building resilience step by step. Safe execution controls protect production environments during live drills. Even the best-designed exercises can create risk if not properly isolated. To avoid this, organizations rely on mirrored environments, sandbox systems, or read-only modes where actions can be tested without impacting real data. Canary accounts or decoy servers can also be used to validate workflows without touching live assets. Safety controls are especially critical when testing containment playbooks that disable accounts or terminate sessions. Without safeguards, exercises risk creating downtime that undermines business trust in security programs. For learners, this can be compared to fire drills in schools. Fire alarms are pulled, exits are tested, but no actual flames are lit. The drill is realistic enough to test readiness but carefully designed to avoid harm. Safe execution controls keep training beneficial without creating new incidents in the process. Pre-exercise briefings and post-exercise expectations set the tone for productive training. Before an exercise begins, participants must understand the objectives, the rules of engagement, and the boundaries. This ensures everyone knows whether the exercise is a discussion, a drill, or a simulation, and what level of realism to expect. Post-exercise expectations must also be defined: what kind of feedback will be gathered, what artifacts will be produced, and what follow-up actions will be tracked. Without this framing, exercises may feel ambiguous or unfocused, leaving participants unsure of what they accomplished. For learners, think of this like a military field exercise. Soldiers are briefed before they begin, debriefed afterward, and expected to carry lessons forward. Briefings and expectations transform exercises from ad hoc activities into structured learning experiences with lasting impact. Metrics captured during training provide objective measures of performance. Useful metrics include decision time, how quickly teams made key calls, task completion, whether containment or remediation steps were completed successfully, communications effectiveness, clarity and speed of stakeholder updates, and tool performance, whether SIEMs, EDRs, or SOAR platforms supported the workflow as expected. These metrics provide a baseline for future improvements, allowing organizations to measure whether training is shortening detection times or clarifying communication lines. Without metrics, exercises risk becoming anecdotal rather than actionable. For learners, it helps to compare this to athletic training. Coaches don't just say, "Good job," they measure sprint times, shooting accuracy, and endurance. Security training must be quantified in the same way. Metrics provide the evidence that teams are genuinely improving, not just going through motions. Actionable outputs are the true deliverables of every exercise. A session that ends with no updates to playbooks, no detection tuning, and no improved communication templates is a wasted opportunity. Exercises must capture concrete outputs such as revised escalation paths, updated containment steps, or pre-drafted stakeholder notifications. These outputs should be tracked with owners and deadlines, just like remediation tasks after a real incident. By requiring tangible improvements, organizations close the loop between training and operational maturity. For learners, this is like practicing a sport and then updating your playbook with new strategies based on the session. The practice is valuable, but its true worth comes from embedding lessons into future performance. Training outputs must be actionable, documented, and integrated into day-to-day operations. Frequency is another consideration that determines training effectiveness. Short, frequent drills for operational teams help build muscle memory and reduce fatigue in real incidents. These may last 60 to 90 minutes and focus on specific scenarios like credential compromise or malware containment. Larger-scale simulations involving executives, legal, and communications teams can be run annually or biannually to test end-to-end readiness. This cadence balances practice with resource investment, ensuring teams stay sharp without overburdening operations. For learners, cadence can be compared to physical training. Daily warm-ups keep reflexes active, while periodic competitions test overall capability. Security response training should mirror this rhythm, providing both frequent repetitions and larger, high-stakes simulations that validate holistic readiness. Cross-team participation is vital for removing friction during real incidents. Many failures occur not because technical steps were wrong, but because handoffs between teams were slow or unclear. Training should include IT, legal, HR, communications, and executive roles, not just security analysts. Practicing together builds familiarity and trust, ensuring that during a real crisis, everyone knows who to contact, what to say, and how to collaborate. For learners, this is like rehearsing as an orchestra rather than as solo musicians. Each player may be talented alone, but harmony emerges only when everyone practices together. Cross-team training ensures incident response is orchestrated rather than fragmented, reducing delays and confusion during actual events. A concrete training task that organizations can adopt is running a 60 to 90-minute analyst-focused tabletop simulating a phishing-to-compromise scenario. The exercise begins with a reported suspicious email, escalates to account compromise, and requires teams to detect, contain, rotate credentials, and notify stakeholders, all within the session. This simulation forces analysts to practice the full incident lifecycle while providing leaders a chance to observe decision speed and coordination. The outputs should include refined phishing playbooks, updated credential rotation checklists, and validated notification templates. For learners, this is like a scrimmage match in sports. It's not the championship, but it replicates game conditions closely enough to test readiness. Practical, focused exercises like this build operational confidence and ensure that when real phishing campaigns occur, the organization already knows how to respond. Integrating automation into exercises ensures teams understand how playbooks, scripts, or SOAR platforms behave under pressure. Too often, exercises focus exclusively on human decisions, ignoring the fact that in real incidents, automated systems may isolate hosts, disable accounts, or enrich alerts before humans intervene. By including automation, operators learn what to expect, what will be done automatically, how logs are generated, and where escape hatches exist if automation misfires. For instance, during a simulated ransomware drill, the exercise should show whether automation locks down file shares immediately or requires manual approval. This prepares analysts to interpret alerts correctly and coordinate with automated workflows rather than being surprised by them. For learners, it helps to think of this like pilots training with autopilot systems. They must know not only how the system functions in normal mode, but also how to take manual control if the automation malfunctions. Exercises without automation are incomplete. Real readiness requires practicing with the tools that will actually operate during crises. Evaluation rubrics provide a structured way to grade performance during exercises. Without rubrics, feedback often becomes anecdotal or subjective, leaving teams unsure of how well they performed. A rubric defines clear criteria, such as detection speed, containment accuracy, communication clarity, and coordination across teams. Each element can be scored or rated, creating an objective baseline for improvement. For example, detection might be graded on whether analysts identified the simulated compromise within 5 minutes of receiving the alert. Communication might be graded on whether executives received accurate updates within the required time window. These rubrics allow instructors or observers to provide constructive feedback grounded in data rather than opinion. For learners, this is like grading a driving test. Examiners don't just say you did fine. They measure stopping distances, lane discipline, and awareness. Rubrics ensure training results are actionable, fair, and useful for continuous development. Involving third parties in exercises increases realism and tests critical dependencies. Many organizations rely heavily on cloud providers, managed service providers, and outside legal counsel during incidents. Excluding these stakeholders from drills leaves major blind spots. For example, if cloud providers control forensic access to certain logs, exercises should simulate how and when those requests would be made. If breach notification involves legal counsel, their involvement must be rehearsed. Managed detection and response partners should also be included to validate escalation and response timelines. Without practice, misunderstandings about responsibilities can slow real-world responses. For learners, this is like rehearsing an emergency drill in an apartment complex but failing to involve the fire department. The internal team may be ready, but without practicing the external coordination, the exercise remains incomplete. Including third parties ensures every part of the extended ecosystem is tested and aligned. Tracking training outcomes is essential for ensuring lessons turn into improvements. Every exercise should generate a list of findings, gaps in detection, miscommunications, or tool failures. These must be converted into tracked actions with owners and deadlines, just like remediation after real incidents. For example, if an exercise revealed outdated escalation contact lists, updating them should become a tracked deliverable with a clear due date. Too often, exercises surface problems but fail to follow through. Tracking ensures exercises don't just identify weaknesses but actively close them. For learners, this is like a coach pointing out flaws during practice but never scheduling drills to fix them. The flaws persist into the next game. By tracking and closing exercise outcomes, organizations steadily raise their resilience, ensuring progress accumulates rather than stagnates. Reusing sanitized past incidents as training material provides realism without risk. Instead of inventing purely hypothetical scenarios, teams can draw on real incidents that the organization or industry has experienced. Sensitive data should be sanitized to protect privacy or privileged information, but the core events, timelines, and decision points can remain. This makes training scenarios both realistic and relevant. Analysts learn how similar attacks unfolded, what decisions were made, and what outcomes occurred. For learners, this is like sports teams reviewing film of past games to prepare for future opponents. They don't study random plays. They analyze actual challenges they faced. Using sanitized incidents as training material ensures exercises reflect lived realities, preparing teams for the kinds of threats they are most likely to encounter again. Escalation testing is a valuable part of training that often gets neglected. Exercises should validate whether escalation lists are up to date, whether on-call rotations are functional, and whether executives know how to receive and act on briefings. This ensures that when real incidents occur, escalation paths work seamlessly rather than failing due to outdated information. For example, if a CFO is no longer the correct executive to notify, this must be discovered in a safe exercise rather than a real breach. Escalation testing also checks communication timelines, ensuring executives or regulators receive updates within mandated windows. For learners, think of this as testing emergency phone trees in schools. If the contact numbers are wrong, the system fails when it is most needed. Escalation testing ensures that when time is critical, notifications and briefings happen smoothly and accurately. Human factors measurement is another key element of training. Technical outcomes are important, but exercises must also evaluate communication clarity, fatigue, and decision-making under stress. Observers should note whether analysts communicated effectively with peers, whether decision-makers became overwhelmed, and whether teams maintained composure under time pressure. Measuring these factors provides insight into how people will perform in real incidents. For learners, think of this like military training under simulated stress. Soldiers aren't just tested on technical tasks, They're tested on how they think, communicate, and act under pressure. Cybersecurity is no different. By measuring human factors, organizations identify whether stress, fatigue, or unclear communication could become liabilities. And they can design improvements such as training, staffing, or clearer playbooks to compensate. The post-exercise after-action review is where findings are consolidated into actionable plans. Reviews should be structured, not casual conversations. A good format includes a summary of findings, a list of owners for remediation, deadlines for each action, and a verification process to confirm completion. For example, if analysts struggled to use EDR tools effectively, the review might assign training updates with a 30-day completion deadline. Without structure, reviews risk producing vague takeaways with no accountability. For learners, think of this as project retrospectives in software development. Teams don't just discuss what happened, they document issues, assign owners, and track follow-ups. After-action reviews ensure exercises translate into measurable improvements rather than just temporary insights. Integrating tabletop lessons into CI/CD and detection pipelines connects human exercises to technical systems. If exercises reveal missed signals, detection engineers should add new correlation rules or telemetry sources. If exercises highlight slow patching, CI/CD pipelines should be updated with automated checks. This integration ensures that exercises not only improve people, but also improve tools. Without this step, lessons remain theoretical. For learners, this is like adjusting training regimens in sports after a bad game. If players were too slow, conditioning drills change. If strategy failed, new plays are added. Exercises must feed back into technical pipelines to create systemic improvements that endure beyond the training session. A continuous training calendar ensures readiness is maintained, rather than addressed through episodic drills. Organizations should establish recurring exercises, ranging from monthly analyst tabletops to annual full-scale simulations. A calendar ensures that training happens regularly, even amid competing business priorities. It also allows for progressive complexity, building from small drills to larger simulations. Without a calendar, training often becomes ad hoc, leaving teams unprepared when real incidents occur. For learners, this is like physical fitness. Sporadic workouts may provide short-term benefits, but lasting performance requires consistent, scheduled training. A continuous training calendar ensures incident response readiness grows steadily, not sporadically. Documenting institutional memory from exercises is another way to build long-term resilience. Exercises often uncover insights about communication gaps, tool behavior, or decision-making challenges. If these lessons remain only in the memories of participants, they are lost when staff change roles or leave. Documenting findings creates institutional knowledge that can be used to onboard new hires, cross-train teams, and provide continuity. This can take the form of sanitized case studies, updated training guides, or centralized repositories. For learners, think of this as a team's playbook. Strategies and lessons are written down so new players can quickly learn, and experienced players can refine tactics. Institutional memory ensures training value compounds over time instead of evaporating after each exercise. Ultimately, training and rigorous verification of fixes close the loop on incident response maturity. Exercises reveal gaps, outputs define fixes, and follow-up drills validate that those fixes work. This cycle ensures that improvements are not theoretical but proven in practice. Organizations that train often, capture outputs diligently, and verify fixes in follow-up drills steadily reduce their response times, improve accuracy, and build resilience. For learners, this is like aviation safety. Pilots train constantly, procedures are updated after incidents, and fixes are rehearsed until they work flawlessly. Cybersecurity must adopt the same mindset. Training is not a one-off event, but a continuous improvement cycle where exercises, fixes, and validation build lasting strength. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.